Hello, everybody. On today's episode, Rob and I remotely check in with Mr. Stuart Dwight, the owner and director of major events company Smart Moves. He shares his secrets to making wow factors at massive live events, and by goodness, he's done quite a few of those. He talks about the good old days of radio promotions when they were truly amazing, and surviving the current pandemic economically, as he shares the gift he has for agility and survival. He's an amazing guy. You'll love his stories and what he's done. Enjoy the show. And welcome back to Reality with Reality Hub. We have our guest Stuart Dwight joining in with Rob and I as we do another remote recording. Stuart, welcome to the show, sir.
Good afternoon, gents.
Good afternoon, Stuart.
So here we are at the start of wave 2 of the New Zealand lockdown. What are your thoughts, Stuart?
It's not what we wanted, really, was it? Especially those of us in the event industry, we've been hit really hard. And so it's even just this weekend, it's shut down so many sports events that I was involved in, and it's not good. It's not good. But I honestly don't know the answer now. There's so many opinions. You listen to Talkback, Talkback is just rife with it, as you can imagine. And I just don't know the answer. I wish I did, but I just don't know.
Well, you're on the right show to have wild, high-octane speculation and express how you really feel. Isn't that right, Rob?
Stu, I'm exactly where you're at with the whole situation. I feel there's just so much contrasting information that it's hard to single out what's really going on. And I feel like there's like two realities being played out where you either join one sort of point of view or join the other point of view. But I tend to think, just have a look at reality and what's actually playing out and have a real objective look at it. And I don't know, man. I feel like certain things are not as they seem, so to speak. And I know that we've delved into this deeply in the past.
We have.
There's this train of thought that we need the borders to be open a little bit so that we can let some people in so that we can still carry on about our business. But obviously that all needs to be managed and micromanaged to the nth degree. But then there's the other train of thought is just like, lock the borders, don't let anyone in, not even New Zealanders. It's like this, it's unfortunate, but this is unprecedented times. It's never happened like this before in this way, that the whole world's affected like this. And so it's almost like, I'm sorry, you New Zealanders overseas, but you just cannot come home. We need to look after our 6 million people here at home, right? And then you're just going to have to, you're living overseas, you've chosen to live there, unfortunately, you're just going to have to put up with it for a while longer until such time as the world comes a little bit more right. But then there's the other side that says, the humanitarian side of it, that says you actually can't do that. Apparently there's a world law that says you cannot do that. You cannot stop people from coming home.
Yeah, I believe there's an international treaty where all countries have to let their citizens come home.
Correct. So if that's the rule, then the system in place here has to be better, right? So the systems that they've got in place with people coming in, the testing processes, how often are those bus drivers that drive out there that pick up the people who are getting off the planes and driving them to hotels, how often are they being tested? How often are the people that are working in the hotels being tested? And that's not clear. We've never been given that 100%. All we get told is, they're regularly tested. Okay, I want to know how much. All right, how many times are they being tested? Tell me.
Yeah, the government has to be open about it. Tell us when, how, where.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all deserve to know, don't we?
You bring up a really good point, because you talk about the systems, and if they're not working, we're not being told exactly. Here's the thing: we get told certain figures, and we're supposed to believe the figures and the facts, so we can determine and make sense of it all. But how are you going to manage all these people coming in? I'm sure there's so many people that are slipping through the system, And so it's just impossible to get an accurate assessment of what's really going on out there. Because this community transmission could have happened weeks ago, months ago, and now they've sort of just caught it and gone, oh, we'll just, these are the numbers we wish we know of now. But, it could have been there the whole time. It's just, and that's where I think it gets really confusing.
But what are the two realities that you were talking about earlier, Rob? An example of two different realities, one playing out than another.
The two realities are that there is a genuine virus that's killing people, and that all the pandemonium, all the shutdowns, all the lockdowns, all the things that have been implemented are totally accurate, and we need to stop this virus, and people are really dying from it. And then there's this other school of thought that, hang on a minute, this lockdown is stopping our civil liberties and freedom, and it's closing the economy, and small businesses are being slowly destroyed, and we're slowly going down that path of, hang on a minute, what's really happening in the bigger grand scheme of things? So, because I know that the New Zealand Public Party held a lockdown protest up in Whangarei yesterday. So there's that camp of people going, hang on a minute, why are we locking down for 26 people that have died? And the figures say that it's 0.04% of the population could die from this. So, it doesn't kind of make sense from that perspective. But if the numbers were in the thousands or tens of thousands, then sure, yeah, I can agree with that.
There are more people going to die from not having their cancer treatments, from not having their hospital treatments, from suicide, from all of those combined, from people with MS, people from old age. So like one of the jobs that I managed to pick up through lockdown, in the first lockdown, was working for a funeral company. And so I've been helping them, and I've learned how to do this. And so we basically is a funeral attendant, all right? Now, seeing all these people come through, and you hear how many have passed away from cancer or MS and all the rest of it. I've not had one from COVID, not one.
Yeah.
All right, and because we've only had 22 in the whole country. All right, we've had 22.
Well, I heard another fascinating overseas statistic that the life expectancy of dying from COVID-19 is higher than the statistic for normal life expectancy, or in other words, the average age of death of someone with COVID-19 is older than the average age of death for an ordinary person without COVID-19, which says to me that it's getting elderly folk who, with the greatest of respect to that population, they are in such a fragile state of health anyway that a common cold or a garden variety flu infection has a high chance of causing death as well.
And saying that, though, Stephen, there are cases of young people dying, babies dying of it overseas now, because it is so rife in those countries. It's not rife here, but in America, it's killing babies, it's killing teenagers, it's killing all ages. But that's because they've now got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's because a large enough population in the US allows us to be able to see the weird outlying fringe examples of what this illness can do.
The other harsh thing about it is that depression rates are going up, suicide rates are going up, and mental health issues. Just today they're talking about butchers and greengrocers not being able to open. You can only have the supermarket. And so the poor old butchers. I don't know what it's like where you guys live, but I live on the Whangaparoa Peninsula, and there's a little bakery, a lovely little Asian couple who started that business up just a few years ago, and they work really hard, long hours. That first lot of lockdown shut them down. They have not been able to come back. Another one just down in Silverdale, same thing, little bakery, great food, hard-working family, gone, shut down, never to open again. That's two that I know of. How many of those around the country?
Oh, goodness me, yeah.
You touched on a really good point. Where's all the push, like in the media, where's the push for eating well and living well and boosting your immunity and doing all those things, exercising, and I have a health and fitness background, and it's like, well, if you're functioning at a high level of health and you get more and more people attuned to that and give them positive energy and positive advice, then isn't that a better thing than putting all this fear out there? Like, I feel like the media really pushes a fear agenda from that perspective, and it's all through numbers and this could happen and that could happen. Well, how about we as a population just take charge of our own well-being and our own health and wellness and start spreading that?
Yeah, because we've got these solutions like we're waiting for the vaccine and you must stay indoors and not get out and interact with people, which is all understandable in that paradigm of thinking. But no one at the same time is saying, make sure you're eating 5+ a day vegetables, make sure you're hydrated, make sure you're getting a little bit of sun on your skin because vitamin D is important. Nothing is said about overall wellness at all.
Just wash your hands.
Yeah, just wash your hands and you'll be fine. There is something we normally do on Reality Hub, Stuart, is actually spend time introducing our guest properly.
Sure.
And instead, being the kind of guys that we are who know each other well, we've just dived right into this hot topic. Stuart Dwight first employed me in the mid-90s as a person to run around in a ZM Black Thunder. And while you were at the radio network running up special operations, which I think was the radio network's version of Black Ops, I was able to get a job with you to go out and do live cross calls from ZM and I don't know, the stations they had at the time, like classic hits and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, remember easy listening, I-98 FM.
I-98 FM. Yeah, that's right. And I was panel operating at the time. I've got a funny story about that too. And since then, you've left that company that morphed into a different company name, and you've been running special type of events and coordinating events around the country. And I can't remember when Rob met you before, because I know he has in passing at least, but we're so glad to have you on the show because I wanted you to discuss some of the really cool things that you've done in your life and in your work. But also I thought that this would be a good show to talk about the reality of agility because as we were just saying a moment ago, you've been doing other things. And what an incredible example of a human being you are to be agile, to jump into doing those other things, especially considering your tenacity to survive as a guy who's been doing these huge events, but then you're willing to go and do some other things I'd never have thought you would have done.
So you want me to go right back to the beginning?
Go back to the beginning. Tell us about what you've been up to. Because you know what? Sometimes we all get real sick of this COVID stuff. Tell us a tale. Yeah.
Okay, so Gisborne born and bred. My mum and dad sailed from the UK in the 60s, and I was born just a couple of days after they arrived in New Zealand. So my mum was 19 and my dad was 21. So they were a young couple, no family, no friends, just jumped on the boat, and 6 weeks on the boat, and my dad had a contract to work as a builder in Gisborne. So I was born there, and they were so poor. I talk to kids these days and they just laugh, but they were so poor that they were sponsored by an elderly lady in Gisborne to live in her house. So they basically had one big bedroom, a big old villa, and they had one big bedroom which had a bed, a set of dressing table drawers and a wardrobe, and the bathroom was down the hallway. So when I came out of the hospital, my first bed was the top drawer of the dressing table. That was
the top drawer. Wow.
The top drawer of the dressing table. Yep. So that was my cot. Till Dad got a few pays in the bank. And anyway, so yeah, grew up at a country school. Went to Gisborne Boys High School. One of the things that was unique about me at Gisborne Boys High School was I wanted to be a journalist when I left school, so I took typewriting classes at school. Gisborne Boys High School, 800 boys, and there was 5 of us in the class. And as you can imagine, we got absolute heaps back into that, because that was just not the thing you did. You're supposed to do woodwork and metalwork and science and all that stuff, and I did English, maths, economics, history, and typewriting.
What
But it
year was
only
this
a
at
few
that
years.
time? What do you remember? What year it was?
Well, that would have been about 1967,
Right, gotcha.
68. Sorry, 77. Yeah, so I'd have been, 77. I was born in 62. So
Right.
77, 75, 76, 77 at high school. And, but it wasn't that much longer, that many years later, that computers came roaring in, and suddenly I can do 120 words a minute on a keyboard, and my mates are all going ding, 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 ding. No good at all. But it was during that time when I was 15. I was 15, and a mate of mine. The other thing is strange about me is I lived outside in the caravan from when I was 13. I didn't live in the house with the family. I lived outside. I was pretty just a bit of a loner, and which is pretty hard to believe, isn't it, Stephen?
Well, it is. No, but it kind of is because no, but isn't that a funny thing of people who actually don't mind being alone, but then they find themselves surrounded by hundreds and maybe thousands of people with the job they do? Yeah.
Yeah. So I lived outside in the caravan. So my form of entertainment was reading books and listening to music. So I used to work after schools and at the weekends and so on, and every cent I had was spent on buying records, 45s and LPs.
Wow.
First 45 I ever bought was Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, and the first album I ever bought was Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, and I still got them both.
Superb choices.
So there you go. Right, so I had this huge collection, and then when I was 15, a good friend of mine, he says, "You got lots of music, eh, bro?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" He says, "My brother's 21st coming up in a couple of weeks. Can you do the music?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll give it a go." You know me, I can go anything. So I just hired a big, huge PA system and some lights and stuff, and I did the music for his 21st birthday.
Wow.
Well, blow me down. At the end of the night, I had 3 more bookings. I'm like, "Well, this is good. I like this."
Wow.
So I went to the bank and borrowed some money and bought all this PA and sound and lights and all the gears, and that's how I started it at 15 years of age, really. Started the disco business up, and it was called Just for the Record. And so that's how I started my events and entertainment company, really. And it just grew and grew and grew. And in the end, in Gisborne, we would run doing music at nightclubs. We were doing sports events. We were doing clubs, 21st weddings. We just owned everything. I had 3 other guys come and work with me, and it grew and grew and grew. When I was 19, I decided, I was also left school when I was 16, and I also worked in the solicitors, believe it or not, and studied while I was working to become a legal executive. So I was doing that other stuff by night and weekends, and during the daytime I was in the solicitors.
Which one did you think would work out for you?
I really, really enjoyed doing the entertainment business.
It's the one you want today.
Yeah. I mean, but the legal business, it was what was paying the bills, and the other one was just fun and cream on top, because it didn't charge a lot of money in those days. But anyway, when I was 19, I decided I've had enough of this little town. I'm going to go overseas. So all my family, and obviously aunties, uncles, cousins, and they're all British. So I jumped on a plane and went on my OE at the age of 19. Go back. I was flatting, left home when I was 16 as well. Very independent. Always have been. So, went on a plane overseas and did all sorts of jobs over there. I was a chef. I was a canteen manager. I sold life insurance. I was a bricklayer's labourer. I worked for Schaefer Pens as the shipping and export manager for Schaefer Pens. So I did all sorts of work, and it was over there that I met my lovely wife, Jackie. And so, we came home after 5 years, and we went back to Gisborne, and within 2 weeks of going back, I bought all my old gear back from the guy who I'd sold it to for doing my disco business, and
really
started it up again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was he just not very successful at it, that guy?
Yeah. Well, no, he was a butcher, and he's still doing it now. He carried on again. He picked it up again a few years later and bought more gear off me again later on.
Wow.
But I did a few different jobs when I was back there. I was office manager for a concrete company. I sold computers. I worked for a cycle shop. I did all sorts of things. And then I actually got headhunted by the local radio station. It was what is now Classic Hits in Gisborne. It was called Gisborne's 2ZG. And I'd approached them. I was running a big teddy bears picnic, and I'd approached them about being a partner with it. I said, I haven't got any money, but I'll give you a percentage of the gate sales. And they were like, oh yeah, okay. Well, after that weekend, I emceed it, I ran it, I organised the whole thing, I did all the competitions, I did the promotions, advertising, did everything. And on the Monday after that, the program director rang me and asked me if I would like a job. And I thought he was wanting to talk to me about doing a promotions type manager's job or an event type job. But no, he offered me a job as a weekend announcer. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'd love to, but I also got to do all my discos and all my events at the weekends. He says, I just want you on a Saturday afternoon from 12 till 4, 12 till 6, and then on a Sunday morning from 6 a.m. till midday. And I'm like, okay.
Ooh,
so
tough
it was like
hours.
2 6-hour shifts.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, I would go and I'd go and set up a disco in the afternoon on the morning of a Saturday. Then I'd go and work on the radio Saturday afternoon. And it was really strange because people would hear me on the radio, and then a few hours later they'd turn up at a wedding, and there was I standing there behind the disco rack ready to play the music at the wedding or the 21st. And they're like, geez, you get around, don't you? Then the next morning they'd wake up and I was on the radio again. so yeah, I got around town quite a bit. But I did all sorts of things. We ran beauty pageants. We ran one of the things that I was so proud of in Gisborne is after a while I decided I had all the sound gear, right? And it would sit in the garage from basically Monday to Thursday, sometimes Friday. It wasn't earning me any money. So I did a whole lot of research on CRM, cause-related marketing. And probably one of the most famous people in New Zealand who did really well with that was Dean Lonergan with his yellow ribbon Fight for Life and F. It was all CRM, cause-related marketing stuff. But what I did is I went round to school groups, charity groups, kindergartens, swimming clubs, rugby clubs, netball clubs, all these different types of people, Women's Refuge, and says, would you like to do some fundraising? And they went, yep, we'd love to do that. I said, cool. I can do fashion shows, fun runs, swimming events, triathlons, beach volleyball, and I just came up with a whole lot. I can do fancy dress parties, theme parties, straight old-fashioned discos, and I just had this whole list of events. And I'll organise the whole thing for you, and all you have to do is sell the tickets, and at the end of the day, whatever profit's made, we'd split it 50-50. So there's no risk to you. I'm taking all the risk. If you don't sell the tickets, whatever. Well, it just took off from there, guys. It really just took off from there. I was able to give up my other work and just solely concentrate on what then became Stuart Dwight Promotions Limited. And
but at this point, what year was that when that happened?
Oh, it wasn't long after we'd got back from the UK, so to be honest, off the top of my head, I'm not so good on the dates and stuff. To be honest, Steve, it was probably 19. Yeah, so I was away for 5 years. So 62, 72, 82. So I went overseas in 81, away for 5 years. 84, 85. Yeah, it was probably in the late 80s. By the time I was doing all that. Yep. Right.
I was just trying to get a peg on where it was when I met you in about 94, 95. So it was
yes.
15 years maybe, or 10 to 15 years before that.
Yes. And then, so then I was a sponge. So I was working in radio, just doing the weekends and doing all my other events. And then one of the announcers from the radio station, she left to go to Hamilton, and I got her job, which was basically as a copywriter. So I was a copywriter writing commercials during the daytime, and then I did an evening shift on the radio, and then I was still doing my weekends. So I was working 7 days a week in radio and doing my other events and stuff. And then I became a sponge with radio. I loved it. I was hooked. I did everything. The boss would say, "Oh, the breakfast announcer's going on leave for 2 weeks. Who wants to do that?" And I'd say, "Pick me." And the lady who does all the recording of all the commercials and all the production, she's going on holiday. Or who wants to do that? Pick me. I'll do that. Program director needs someone to fill in for a week. I'll do that. And I just learnt everything as I could. And it got to the stage where I can't learn any more in Gisborne, do any more. There was nowhere for me to go. And so they said the only thing you can do with what you want to do is go and be a manager of a small station where there's only 3 or 4 staff. So I applied to be the manager of Tokoroa, believe it or not. And I had to go to Auckland to meet the regional manager, and his name was Grant Lee. And it was the first time I'd met Grant Lee, and I went for the interview, and the interview went really well. And he rang me a few days later, and he said, "Look, I'd never met you before, never heard of you, but you've certainly made a mark. I'm going to go with my first instinct and give the job to somebody else, but you know who you are." So that was fine. The guy who got the job went to Tokoroa. He ended up being the manager back in Gisborne, where I wanted to get out of. So that was really interesting. So he went from Hamilton to Tokoroa to Gisborne, and he still lives there now. So anyway, it was only a few weeks later that Grant Lee rang me, and he said, "I've got a special project happening in Auckland that I need someone to come and do. Can you go and look after a radio station for me for 3 weeks?" I'm like, "Sure, no problem. Where is it?" And he said, "Taumaranui." I'm like, "Yeah, no worries. Cool." And he said, "I'll send you the details." And when I got off the phone, I was on air at the time, and I went through to the manager, and I says, "I got to go and look after another station for 3 weeks." He said, "Oh, cool. Where are you going?" I said, "Taumaranui." He says, "Oh, that'll be fun." I said, "Where's Taumaranui?" I had no idea where Taumaranui was. So that was funny. Now, here's a little sideline. The manager of my station at that time was a guy called Stephen Hunter. Stephen Hunter left us. You know who Stephen is?
Yeah, Stephen Hunter from Now What?
Hunter from The Hobbit.
Yep.
Yeah, we had him on our show just a couple of episodes back. Stephen Hunter is running a podcast in Australia with our friend Janine, and it's called Nah What?
Well, there you go. Well, Stephen was my boss at radio in Gisborne for a while.
Wow.
Wow. He is a top man. He's a top man. Small world, eh?
Small world.
So anyway, so I went to Taumaranui for 3 weeks, supposedly 3 weeks. I ended up there for 3 months. My wife was back in Gisborne, and my mate took over and was running all my disco business and everything for me. Everyone thought I'd left town and that my wife was having an affair with my old mate, the butcher, from running my business. And it was just small town politics, and rumour mill was hilarious. And then while I was in Taumaranui, I applied for the job to be the promotions manager of Easy Listening I-98 FM in Auckland. So, of course, then I came to Auckland for an interview with Grant Lee, who had put me in Taumaranui. So I got that job. So it was basically, I went home on a Friday, we packed the truck up on a Saturday, and I was gone on a Sunday. And Gisborne's like, "What's happened to Stuart? He just disappeared." And his wife's now gone as well. And it was funny, a few weeks after we were in Auckland, Amanda Gillies off of TV3 now, Breakfast TV3.
Yeah.
So Amanda, I actually taught her. She took my place on radio in Gisborne. I taught her. And she was also doing some part-time writing for the Gisborne Herald. And she rang me. She goes, "Stuart, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" She goes, "There's rumours are rife around this town." I said, "Yeah, it's cool. I got a great job. I'm living in Auckland and I'm working in radio, big radio station up here and everything." She goes, "Oh, cool. Can I do a story?" I had a story on the front page of the Gisborne Herald because I disappeared.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. So, so did all sorts of events, and then in Auckland, that just grew as well. Like I say, I'm a sponge, and I ended up being the promotions manager for all 7 brands that we had at the time. And then Grant Lee came up with this idea that he'd seen in America about what they call a non-traditional revenue manager. And that was basically ways of bringing in revenue to the radio company in non-traditional ways, not instead of just 30-second ads. So he said to me, "I'll give you 6 months. If you can make some money out of this, then you can keep the job." I said, "Yep, righto, no worries." And we'd just won the America's Cup. Just come home. So I went and met with another gentleman called Bob Gill, who's a very astute businessman who just recently passed away. And he and another fellow by the name of Bernie Brown, we ended up working with America's Cup Village Limited. We got the rights. We did whole lots of packages around the America's Cup. We made millions of dollars for the radio network, and I managed to keep my job doing that. And that's where lots and lots of events came along.
And so that title was titled as Special Operations, wasn't it?
Special Projects Manager.
That's right, Special Projects Manager, which I referred to as Black Ops. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you made money in the strangest of ways.
Special Projects Manager, which everyone else keeps saying, well, that's the job that no one else wants to do. So
yeah.
But it was fun. Geez, we had some fun. We had lots and lots of very cool events.
What sort of things are untraditional about that strike you as something that you were doing then? Maybe they're still doing it now, but that the general public don't realise that radio industry can make money out of, that they don't understand. Because most people would think, well, radio makes money out of sales of advertising, and as simple as that, you sell ad space and that's how they survive. But there's more than that, right?
Oh, absolutely. So what I would do is I would partner up with events, and because I had such a broad event background, so I'd partner up with an event. Good example, V8 Supercars, when that first came to New Zealand. So I went and met with Dean Calvert, who was working for IMG at the time. Also now a very successful business promoter, runs the big Greenstone concerts. So Dean was the manager at IMG. So I met with him, and I said, have you got a radio partner for the V8s? And he said, no. I said, can I put a proposal to you? And he said, sure. So what I did is I put a proposal together that we would partner up with them. They would pay us a small amount of money, less than they would normally, right? But in return, we would have the exclusive broadcast rights, which normally you would have to pay for. So we got exclusive broadcast rights for free. We also got the exclusive promotional partnership rights for free. He didn't pay us, we didn't pay him. And then part of the deal was that he would give us the contacts for all of the sponsors of V8 Supercars. All right. So what we did is we helped them promote their event so they could sell tickets. All right. We got a clip of the tickets. We get a percentage of the ticket sales. Plus, we got to go and work with all of their sponsors, saying, and a good example, Harvey Norman used to sponsor one of the race cars and be a co-partner of the thing, as did Ford, as did Holden, So we used to go and talk to those people and say, you're involved with the supercars, cool. We're the official radio station. So if you want to do anything about the V8 supercars, you got to do it with us because we're going to be all over it. So they would spend their money with us rather than the other station because we were the ones that owned it. We were the ones that were all over it. And then when you went to the event itself, we would run promotions and competitions on site. So there was signage everywhere. We had promo girls. We had the whole works. And so you knew that we were all over it. The media works, they weren't allowed anywhere near it. And in fact, the first year, The Rock tried to park their vehicles at the front gate, and Steve Brebner, who was the ops manager, he got them towed away because they basically parked their vehicles up front and came inside, and so he got their vehicles towed away. That's how loyal they were to us and we were to them.
And it really worked out for them too, didn't it? I mean, the return for them was beneficial.
We did it for 10 years.
Wow.
Yep. And then after I left, it all fell over.
It all fell over after you left. What were you going to say, Rob?
Say that incident with the Rock FM, that's a lot of, when I was doing a lot of events, it would be like guerrilla marketing. They would go to that event and try and capitalize on all the people that were entering the venue and stuff. And you mentioned the V8 supercars, and well, I mean, you just got to look at the supercars, the actual vehicles, and all the sponsors are plastered all over the cars, so you understand how important those sponsors are. And then, and then how that's televised, and you see all those names of whether it's Harvey Norman or the radio station, just getting more and more coverage. So it's amazing how that all comes together.
But we also did things like the America's Cup. So there was seven syndicates the first year. So we aligned a different station with each syndicate, and so they were the New Zealand ambassadors for each of the syndicates, and that was very cool. And
Wow.
so everyone supported Team New Zealand, but also you could do stuff, and so we had like Flavour. Remember Flavour? They had a party. The Flavour they had a party on one of the team bases. ZM had a party on a team base. Newstalk ZB had a party on a team base, and we were the only ones allowed in, because MediaWorks weren't allowed anywhere near them. We broadcast from the village. Security, there was security in and out, and our vehicles were the only ones allowed to drive in. More FM and those guys would go and park their vehicles at the gate to try and do a live crossover, and security would tell them to go away in a nice, polite way. Sorry, you can't do that here.
Just to clarify, if you're listening and wondering what network, it was the radio network that you were doing that in, and the radio network, because it's changed its name now, right, to NZME. Yeah, but the radio network at the time was, as you said, ZM, I98, Classic Hits,
Hauraki,
Newstalk ZB, all those major players, and they were the major network, because MediaWorks was kind of really second fiddle, but it had TV3.
Yes, they had the Rock, they had the Edge, they had More FM. They didn't have the Breeze at the time. They were their three main stables. But, the V8s, they'd turn up, park their vehicles outside and come in with boxes of T-shirts with the Rock on them, and they were handing them out to have people wandering around in T-shirts wearing the Rock, just to, like you say, guerrilla marketing and ambush it. But, they soon got shut down. That was quite funny. But also those things. So the other thing as well, the way of making money for that, Stephen, that you talked about, is that a lot of those events is that our account managers would do advertising deals, advertising packages based around the V8s, so that we would also get a whole lot of corporate hospitality. So they would be upselling to their clients so that spend this much money with us and you can have 4 tickets to come to the V8s on the Saturday or the Sunday. And so they made a lot more money as well. So there was the non-traditional revenue, increase in traditional revenue, the whole branding and marketing exclusivity. It was just the whole package, and that's what I used to do. And it was fun. There was never a dull moment, that's for sure. And we did all sorts of things. We did theatre shows. We did, as I say, the big ones like the America's Cup, the V8s. We did sports events. We would take clients.
I have a memory of a theatre show at the Waterfront Theatre. Do you remember the Waterfront? The Waterfront, because it's not. Yeah,
remember you helped me with the Rugby World Cup. So remember, we put umpires' chairs in the middle of the street down there, so to try and with PA systems to try and keep the traffic flowing and to get them.
That's right.
Do you remember that? So that
I do.
Because I'd seen it done overseas at the Melbourne Grand Prix, and they all the entranceways they have these umpires' chairs.
So just for people listening, those umpire chairs, they're the kinds of chairs that you'd have an umpire sitting at a tennis match. They're really high up, right? They're the ones where the guy who's smashing his racket on the ground is yelling up at the umpire, "The ball was out!" Anyway, so it's one of those umpire chairs, and you had us sitting in the middle of the street downtown. We were surrounded by people, and I had a microphone and a PA system right next to me or underneath the chair, and I just talked to people in the street. I can't remember what we said, but keep on moving. And today's event is such a
big screens were. Do you remember? Because they had big screens on the various wharves, and so I
had a list of all of those things to say. Don't forget, at the Big Wharf today, you can see it at 6 p.m. And don't forget, da da da. Yeah.
And so we had them all.
That was really novel.
We had them all along the wharf. We had them all along the street and down the wharves and everywhere. And that was just an idea that I'd given to at the council and their events team to try and help with their traffic problems and their people flows.
Yeah, and they certainly needed that help. Some lateral thinking for that. So you spent quite a few years there, and then you got to a point where you wanted to move on. Why did you want to move on?
It got to there were a number of changes in management. I'd become part of the Auckland management team, and a very well led team by Grant Lee, and a man that we all had a lot of respect for. But there were changes happening in the senior management team. The CEO, who also had become and still is a very good friend, he was leaving, and I just felt that the direction that the radio was going in, because we used to do all the fun stuff. You know, I mean, in the old days, geez, they'd call you up and say, we're having a school gala, can you come along and play a bit of music and have some fun? And it was all about getting brand loyalty from people, and you turn up and you do stuff, you know. But they didn't. And I described it as radio became an accountancy company that played music and did talkback because they charged for everything. Nothing was free anymore. It was all about the bottom line. And so that fun stuff just gone. How do you remember the Hauraki billboards? Do you remember that promotion?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
No. What particular promotion?
So if I tell you, so on Key Street, that was about opposite where the Air New Zealand building is now. We put people living on a billboard. It was a Hauraki promotion that we did. And
yes.
So we had people living on a platform up in front of a billboard, and I think we had 12 people to start with, and they had basically 1.5 meters by 1.5 meters to live in, and they had to stay there, and they were trying to whoever stayed the longest was going to win $20,000, and. Right. People gave up their jobs to go and take part, and they were allowed to come down once a day to go to the bathroom and to get food, and food was all delivered. We had deals with pizza companies and fast food companies and all that sort of stuff, and in the end, they were up there so long, we had CNN, the BBC, Australian television companies. We were on the 6 o'clock news every night of the week for the Hauraki billboard update. It was just unbelievable. It was cool, fun stuff, you know. And radio stations just don't do that anymore. In the end, with the 3 people that were up there, I think they were up there for 3.5 months or something. It was costing us more to keep them up there than it was to pay them off. So in the end, we brought them all down and gave each of them 20 grand.
Which was really just a drop in the bucket, right?
Yeah,
for
the amount of publicity that we had received, absolutely. But they don't do that sort of stuff anymore.
I mean, that's very creative stuff, that sort of marketing, and then you get all that free publicity. That gets generated. What's that called, Stu? That kind of marketing where you create that sort of dynamic, and do you know what I mean? Like, you remember those promotions where you could win the car where you had to physically touch the car of the last person? Yeah, those sort of things generate a lot of human interest, and people get really involved with that. But I think there's a term when it's sort of...
Yeah, it's similar to my cause-related marketing, but it's another word, yes. And off the top of my head, I can't think what it is. But do you remember 1999? I was very lucky. One of the biggest events I ever did was the Town Clock Party in Gisborne, because we're the first city in the world to see the sun. So I had run all the New Year's Eve parties for 7 years prior. And we were the only city in New Zealand that didn't get any rain that night. And we had this big, massive party in Town Clock Party there. We had 40,000 people in the main street of Gisborne. So that was pretty huge. But up here in Auckland, we ran a promotion with ZM, and we had Marcus Lush and Lana Cocroft as our 2 hosts. And Marcus had come up with this brilliant idea called 99 Babies. And what we did is we got 99 couples to come in, and it was exactly 9 months out from 31st of December 1999. We had this big party in a hotel in Auckland.
Right.
And they all got issued with every kind of fun product for the bedroom in the hotel rooms. And so we had this big party downstairs in the ballroom, and they all drank and food and music, and we had DJs on, and they're all partying up, and it was a massive big party. As I said, 99 couples. So, and then just about 11:30, right, Marcus gets on the microphone. He says, "Right, you all know what you're here for. Go on, F off to your bedrooms." So they all went off to their bedrooms, and they all had fun there for the night time, and then they all come down the next morning looking rather sheepish at breakfast because everyone knew what everyone was doing, and so we were trying to see if we could have a ZM baby on New Year's Eve 1999, and we had 3 babies. as a result of that party. But we got 9 months worth of publicity out of it because those 3 people who were having babies. And we had all these companies come on board with products and promotionals, and we had baby products and all sorts of things. It was just 9 months worth of publicity on one promotion.
Wow. So when did you leave the radio network? Do you remember what day that was, or date that was?
Yeah, well, it's pretty much coming up now. 7 years ago next week. 7 years ago. And it was I just wasn't enjoying myself anymore. And I've always said, if I'm not enjoying my work, then I'll go and find something else. And that's why I've had so many different jobs, because you work to live, you don't live to work.
Such a good tenet. So I got to say, one of the things that's really missing from radio, and I don't know if we can actually directly attribute it to you not being there, because this is something that you did so well. And I think I could go out on a limb and say probably we can attribute in New Zealand this massive missing factor directly to you and other people like you in other countries, because I think this has happened around the world. As people like you have left, and in its place is more of that older-fashioned model where they don't do those things anymore. People say radio used to be so much fun and kind of debaucherous and really fun.
Yeah.
But now that all that stuff has stopped, we have streaming radio, we have Spotify, we've got iHeartRadio, and it's all as boring as shit. And there's no community engagement anymore. There's no sense of my local radio station that tells me or gives me a sense of the community I'm in, especially as it stopped being regional and it became someplace in Auckland is broadcasting for the whole country way more than ever before. I know we've always had an aspect of that, but it just got more blanket and more controlled by a computer server throwing up songs and just playing on auto rotate with pre-recorded breaks in between. I'm all for technology, but they stripped the heart out of something that's local and could connect to you. And then they went and put it onto streaming services, which essentially are doing, well, they didn't put it onto streaming services. Streaming services came in. And Spotify and other streaming services like it just sort of went, well, this is all radio is doing anyway, so now we can beat them at their own game. Because radio lost their point of difference by having a connection to the community.
You've lost those personalities. I mean, Mike Hosking, love him or hate him, is a personality, you know. He says what he thinks. He doesn't mind arguing and doing stuff like that. But the music jocks, they're just robots. And I know some of them personally. They're very, very nice people, but they have to say, you are only allowed to talk for 90 seconds. You must only talk for 30 seconds. You do not back announce the songs anymore. If they want to know what the songs are, they have to go to the website to find them. You don't know what half the songs are being played anymore. You know, it's just so different.
So is it any wonder then, Stuart, that these services that have come in are able to do as well as they do to compete with ordinary radio, because they're just spitting music out, like you say, and they have radio services that are digital that have these people speaking for 90 seconds and doing the same thing that radio's doing. So they're now trying to compete with that. Our old radio stations are trying to compete with these new services coming in because they stopped having human connection. And then is it any wonder that a podcast like ours that can go for an hour and a half, or Joe Rogan's that can go for 2-3 hours, really connect to people? Because this concept of us all having a really short attention span turns out not to be true. Turns out we like to talk to each other.
Yeah, we do like to talk to each other. But the thing is, for me, with radio, it was also where's the real people? So, for example, when I was working with Kerry Smith in I98 FM, we used to make her go out and do events. She hated it, but I'm like, you have to go out because I need people to say, actually, she's really cool. I might listen to her tomorrow. But putting her face on a bus back makes no difference to me. You can spend all the money you like on a bus back. I'm not going to change channels. But if I meet the person and I think, hey, they're really cool, then I might listen to them tomorrow. So I was always getting our announcers to go out and about and do stuff and be seen and go and do things. But they don't do that anymore. Very, 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 very seldom.
You make up a really good point, Stu, about, when I was doing a lot of brand ambassador roles, it was always about the human connection and the relationship that you established with people as you represented a brand. And so when they got that human interaction and they liked you, they then connected that with the brand and had what was most important and lacking now is an actual experience. So you take away that experience. And that's why it's called experiential marketing. But now the thing is the playing field has changed because we have social media and we've got all these platforms like YouTube, Facebook, etc., where everyone has a platform, and now you can be the producer, director of your own show or whatever you uniquely want to give to the world. So these other like radio stations and the other media channels, I mean, they've got huge competition with with basically anyone who can sort of provide content.
Throw together a recording. Yeah.
Yeah. So the landscape's changed.
Well, despite themselves, aren't they? They're still doing well despite themselves. That's the thing. They're still doing well. They still have a lot of listeners just because of the people that are on there, the radio, the Mike Hoskins and so on. Talkback will always do well, I think, but the music stations, you can, like you say, you can do a Spotify, make your own playlist, listen to it online, do whatever you want to do. So they're reliant on the announcers and whatever promotions they do to drag people in. And some just do it better than others. Some still do it well. It's interesting dynamic there in those radio stations right now.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I heard overseas that the amount of broadcasters who are trying to get their own podcasts in light of podcast growth is being they're on the back foot because podcasts grew and grew and grew to the point that there was 700,000 podcasts in the world. And that was a statistic that's over a year old now. And the popularity of podcasts and people just sitting there spending time on them has grown so much that as radio revenues reduced and they knew that people were off to go and listen to podcasts instead of listen to the show announcer on a radio show, they got in late to the podcasting game. And suddenly we see now they're broadcasting news of their own podcasts you can also go listen to, whilst they double up with their show and they put some of their show contents onto it. So they're catching up with that. They want to dominate that too, I think, because they're a little bit behind on that. So, but they have the sort of aspect of professionalism and they know how to put things together. But I don't know that they've got that people are willing to just spend a long time listening that they're not used to.
Have you noticed, though, that after lockdown, how many people were just screaming out for good live entertainment, whether it was sport, concerts, musical theatre, shows, just because people were locked in, locked down. So you can spend as much time as you like on watching TV, listening to the radio, listening to podcasts, but that human interaction, man, it just went off again.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
because
that's a good. You go, Rob.
Yeah, we're social creatures. Even you can have. You can be introverted and like your quiet time, like to do things on your own, but we are social creatures and we do like to connect and we do like to do the things that we enjoy, which involve other people. And I think that's a major reason why cinemas still are very popular. I mean, we've got Netflix, we've got all these streaming things that we can watch at home, but we still enjoy going to the movies, still having the experience going out and having, the tactile, physical experience. And I think that's very important. And
I love a good
and when you're at
cinema.
a live event, there's an energy, there's a whole different dynamic at play. Going out to dinner, going to a cafe, all those things, are on that same sort of wavelength of being out in society. It's all it's a cultural thing. There's a whole bunch of levels. And you're right, if live events are restricted, then it has an impact, I think, on our general well-being and how we spend our lives.
Yeah, and the human energy system is more than just something that sits and watches. We interact and get a vibe off people, and it does something for us as human beings. And without that live experience, we're becoming locked into places and not our fullest version of ourselves. That's why live theatre is really a neat experience that people should attend, and also sitting together in groups that this virus is taking away from us. It worries me the effect that'll have on people. I must say, though, when it comes to TV and stuff, Stuart, appointment-based viewing where you would watch TV at 7:30 at night, that absolutely feels like a thing of the past to me.
Yeah.
I'm not into that anymore, because I was really surprised to hear you say that radio is still doing well in some of that old paradigm stuff, but they must be seeing the writing on the wall. I mean, this is the moment. This is the moment in history where Apple comes out with a brand new computer in 2010 called the MacBook Air, and it doesn't have a DVD slot on it. This is the moment that says, watch out, things are about to change. And your Blockbuster going, no, it won't. That's silly. I'm still going to rent out my DVDs. This is that moment where you go, guys, the writing's on the wall. And I think the radio industry must be seeing that. I know TV is. I know from my experience in working on some television shows recently that streaming has taken over so much that it's just gutting our industry. So they've got to get on and change.
Newspapers is the one that's being hit the hardest, and magazines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do they deal with that? Paywall? And if they go paywall, then no one wants to come in? Holy shit, what a problem. Yeah. And if only they were more connected to people in the years that led up to this and had alliances with radio stations that were actually more connected to people, they could have prevented some of these problems. Because it's that brand equity that you built in the jobs and the special operations you did that I think held people in. But I'm of the opinion, and I could be wrong because you say they're still doing well, but I'm of the opinion because they stopped doing that sort of stuff, they're more easily going to lose people.
I'm not sure. I'm not so sure they're doing well, but they're still there, and they've still got a lot of listeners. They're still, but it's a dying age,
It's a sunset industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Blockbuster Video still did well after Netflix came out for years until it finally couldn't. Yeah.
Yes. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But one of the things, just talking about the events and stuff, for me, that's been really important, and I try to do in events, whether it's a small event with 10 people or 50,000 people, and I think I've had this discussion with you before, Stephen, is that I'm a huge Disney fan.
Yes, you have said that, yeah.
And it's not that I'm in love with Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse or anything like that, but I've read just about every book and every word that's ever been written about Walt Disney. He was tough. He was a hard man. There's been some good documentaries on TV just recently. He had some hard times. He had some good times. Sometimes it was my way or the highway. But he always had a vision and a dream at the end of it and a goal. But the thing, the saving grace for him was building Disneyland, because all the movies, it was getting really tough getting people to buy into his movies and all the rest of it. And he started Disneyland. Now, I've been to Disneyland in California 22 times, the one in Florida about 6 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
And so I wander around those venues and I just love it. I'm like, how did they do this? And how did they do that? And where did this? And I'm like Jackie, my wife, at the parade, she's crying because she just loves it. And it's so emotional, and the kids and stuff. And I'm like, how did they play that? And where did that music come from? And where does that happen? And how do they turn the lights on there? And all that, And the thing for me that I've learned about Walt Disney, which I try and do, is about creating what I call wow factors. Some people call them peaks and troughs, highs and lows. I call them wow factors. And so, you put on a fireworks show, for example. So the first wow factor for me is how easy is it for Dad to get a car park for the family to get in and out nice and easily, not have to join a queue 3 miles long to get into the venue. So then at the end of the day, Dad goes, wow, that was cool. Got in and out of there real quick, didn't have to queue, Yeah. Wow factor for Mum is nice, clean toilets. All right. Yeah, she's there for the fireworks show and for the kids and the family, but she just wants a nice, clean toilet, And if she goes home at the end of the night and Dad's got the kids in and out of the car quickly, Mum's got nice, clean toilets, the second wow factor is the kids are safe. Right? We haven't even set a firework off or get them on a ride or anything else yet. We've got them in, we've got them out, we've got clean toilets, and they're safe. All right. Then now you add everything else. So then it's a create. So like, how many times have you been to an event and they have face painters there, and they'll have a queue of 200 kids long because they've only got 2 face painters? The way to fix that, have 20 face painters so you don't have the queues. All right. And so then it's like,
oh God, we need you right now in those. We need you right now in those COVID tests where there's a queue 400 cars long and one in every 30 cars actually has someone that's symptomatic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And everyone's going, wow.
Yeah.
And so it's about creating lots of cool factors, like when you have an event and you turn up and there's massive queues at the food stands, at the food vendors, because there's only 6 of them when there should be 26 of them or 36 of them, because you know how many people are coming. So let's work it out. How many people can they serve in a period of time? Right. How many cups of coffee can you make in an hour? Oh, I can do 30 cups in an hour. Okay, cool. Right. I've got 10,000 people. Let's say 1,000 of them want coffee. I'm going to need to have 10 coffee makers, not one.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It's a logistics game. And then when people come in, they're not queued up for food, or if they're queued up for food, you can time it and they're queuing for 3 or 4 minutes, not for 30 or 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And so then when they go home, they go, wow, I got in easily. The toilets were clean. The queues were short. And do you know what? The reason we went for a fireworks show, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And so you've got, that's how I like to run my events, whether it's, like I say, for 5 people or 5,000 people. Create wow factors. You want people to go home happy, even if it's only one wow factor. And one wow factor might be there were clean toilets. The rest of it was rubbish, but the wow factor was we had clean toilets. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You've sold me.
And it's like on a scale between major screw up and success, where there's all well factors at this end, you want to be at that end of that scale. That's why your business is not called clusterfuck, events, because that's what it becomes, right? If you're 40 minutes for food, that's a giant clusterfuck. This is not how it should be. Yeah. Actually, this is a really good time to segue to what is the name of your business, Stuart, because you just jumped right into the things that you like to tick off when you run an event, just so that people know you run massive events, and I'd love to hear some of the names of the type of things you're doing now.
Okay, yeah. So the company's called Smart Moves Group, which is a brand name that my wife and I have had for many, many years. So then when I left radio, I said, let's just dig that one back out again. Smart move to do your business with me. A lot of people thought I was starting up a house removal company, Smart Moves, but no. So no, Smart Moves. And so things that I'm doing at the moment. So because of COVID, as I said, I got a job with a funeral company, doing some work for them as a funeral attendant. Tomorrow and Saturday, I am going to be doing security for a friend of mine who's got a security company at a old folks village, because the government said they need to have some security on the gates and so on. So I'll be doing 12-hour shifts for a security company, just because.
This is amazing. This is amazing, right? Because you've done. The last time I saw you, the events you were running were major stadiums full of people. You had hired me for a kind of an MC for the group up in the what do you call it? Up in the clouds. The members only VIP group at netball stadiums, full of major events and finals. And then I know that you're running that huge fireworks display event with thousands of people turning up in West Auckland. I hear you flying around the country, often either with sports or live events and racing and all sorts of things. And when COVID hits, and this really speaks to who you are as a hard worker, and I don't want to blow too much smoke up your ass, but you just turn around and go, screw it. Is there a security job going? And I can work for the wage on that per hour? That blows my mind. So many people aren't willing to do that. And but then, you just gave us before a rundown of all the jobs you did as a younger man, and you were willing to do anything and everything. And I've got so much respect for that. That's so cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I've still got a mortgage to pay, and the Inland Revenue doesn't go away. They keep knocking on your door, and so you've got to do what you've got to do. So in the meantime, I'm currently working on a comedy tour, taking 2 very funny comedians on a tour at the end of September, hopefully, and October. I've got a concert in Christchurch that I work on. I've been doing for the last 5 years, 10,000 people there. That's in March next year. I've got a concert that I'm doing up at Gulf Harbour. I do a very unique 1,000 people only concert right on the end of the Whangaparaoa Peninsula on the 16th fairway at the Gulf Harbour Country Club. Most amazing views that you've ever seen. So that's a very unique little one. Then I'm a quiz master. I do 2 quiz nights a week at 2 local pubs, but I also do a lot of corporate quiz nights for Believe It or Not. I do, but then I do technical stuff as well. Like I'm the main technical manager for the ASB Classic, which I've been doing for a number of years now. So I sit at the back of the grandstand, making sure that the MCs can be heard and the cues are all right with the player introductions, and we can all hear the umpire, and that the feeds are going out to the TVs and the big screen. We play all the right ads. So I manage all that as well for 2 weeks. Is solid at the summertime over there. So it's not always about being the event manager. I contract into a lot of places because I have such a broad skill set, and so I do a lot of MC work. People know me for my hats, Stephen. You know that.
Yes. I'm surprised you're not wearing one now.
No, I wear trilbies. And I have over 100 trilbies of different colours and different bands and stuff like that. And I wear those. And often I get people say to me if they see me without, I didn't recognise you without your hat. Really? Okay,
yeah.
Cool. But that's my thing.
Those are your Clark Kent glasses.
Yeah. But I wear hats. And the reason I do that is because if people don't remember my name or my face and they're talking to someone about me, you know that guy that always wears the hats. That's the
guy in the hat.
Yeah. He's always wearing the hats.
I thought you were alluding to the whole fact that you're a man that wears many hats because you have so many roles, but you actually wear a hat.
Right.
Both, mate.
Both. Yeah.
Absolutely both.
Because listening to your story, I'm just amazed that you have the gift of adapting, and you're very versatile, and you're willing to just change. And you said before, very early on, that if you're not happy in a situation, you don't like it anymore, you move on. But you've sort of continued on with the path of events, and what's the underlying thing that you enjoy the most about events or putting on those sorts of things? Is there something? Yeah. Is it the fun? Is it the...
Yeah. So sometimes it's just the joys of coming back with an idea, or for either myself for an event, or for a client, or for somebody to come up with something and turning it into reality. I was the event director for Triathlon New Zealand for 3 years.
Oh wow, great!
We'd turn up at a lakeside or a seaside, and it's just a piece of grass, some road, and the water.
Yeah.
And then we'd unload a container and turn it into this mighty village of fencing and signs and bikes and people and music, and just take over the place for 3 days. And at the end of the 3rd day, we'd pack it all down again and put everything back in the container. The container would go away, and we would take the plastic rubbish covers off the local rubbish bins, because we'd bring our own in, and so that the local rubbish bins didn't even get used. We'd take the plastic off of those, take them away, and we've taken it back to how it was. And that's very cool.
That is very cool.
That's very cool. Concerts are the same. Shows are the same. Just turning dreams into reality. And I like to try and do stuff that's a bit outside the square. Like, for example, I can give you a couple. Donny Osmond, right? You'll know.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So Donny Osmond came to New Zealand, and so I went to the promoter and I said, could we organise a private lunch for some listeners with Donny Osmond? And they're like, yeah, we can ask him. I said, tell him that we won't make any money out of it. Any money that we raise, we'll give to a charity that he wants. And they're like, he's okay. Yeah, that's cool. So what I did is that how we promoted it is that backstage with Donny Osmond. And so we held a lunch on the stage at Sky City, right? So we put tables and chairs and decorated it all up. We had a small stage, 2 chairs, and a backdrop with Donny Osmond. And people came in and they were able to have lunch, and then Donny Osmond came on, Mike Hosking interviewed him, and then we got people to write questions down themselves, and they got handed to me, and I went through them all, picked out half a dozen, and then Mike and Donny were on the stage, and Donny would go, right, we've got a question here from Mary. Hi, Mary. And Mary's like, ah. And then, yeah, it was amazing. And then all these and they all turned up with pillowcases they'd had since they were 12 years old and records and all the rest of it for Donnie to sign, you know. And a life experience. And you know what, Steve? You just did it. Wow. There you go, mate.
Yeah.
See what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
And then Donnie, he said, look, Mike Hosking said, look, Donnie's got 10 minutes to sign autographs. And he had a new book out at the time. We had 120 people there. He stayed and signed every single book.
What a celebrity.
10 minutes. He was an amazing man. Absolutely amazing, right? And so we created a wow factor day for 120 people that they will talk to their grandchildren about forever, you know? And that was just a little outside the square idea I had about creating some cool experiences for our listeners because Donnie was in town, you know? And it was just, it was cool. And you get a buzz out of that because it was just a dumb idea. It was just a dumb idea. Let's see if we can have lunch with Donnie.
That's so cool.
And guess what? It worked.
You can have lunch with Donnie.
And sometimes... Sometimes you got to dream those things, you know, and ask.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing, you know, because there will be people out there that would totally want that and totally enjoy that, and it'll be something they'll remember forever. But it takes someone like you to actually go, hang on, I can actually make this happen.
That's one of my faults. That's one of my faults, mate, is that people will say, can you do this? And I go, yeah, no worries. And then when I'm out of sight, I'm like, sheesh, how am I going to do that?
That.
Right? We got to make that happen.
See, it all started from the disco back in Gisborne, right?
Yeah. But it's sometimes, and also just thinking on the fly. For example, I went Sylvia Park. They used to have a stage there, a big stage there, and they did this big Christmas promotion where they'd light the trees. So I went with an account manager, and it was between us and MediaWorks as to who was going to get the business for this Christmas concert. And I said to them at the end, I said, well, I tell you what though, I said, I'll provide you with a Santa Claus, and it'll be like Santa that you've never had before, and the other guys won't be able to do it. And they said, what's that? I said, my Santa will sing. He will sing Christmas carols with you and with the kids. And they're like, really? I said, yep. I says, I guarantee it, right? So then so they're like, okay. So we got back in the car, and then I rang my friend Trevor in Gisborne, who I know is a very good singer, and he's also done Santa Claus. And I'm like, dude, I've got a gig for you in Auckland. He's like, cool. What do I have to do? I says, you just got to sing. He says, yeah, that's easy. I said, dressed as Santa. He's like, shit. But he did it. He did it for us, and we did it 3 years in a row. They loved him.
Wow.
And that was just off the cuff.
So, what is the worst experience of an event that is just, it was incredibly either embarrassing, funny, or you learnt a lot from? Just to really change the tone and bring it down.
You had to bring that up, Steve?
Well, I think we learn a lot from bad experiences.
No, we do.
Don't
you
we?
do.
Okay.
We do learn a lot.
It's more about not so much that it's more about the unplanned things that you had no control over. And
right.
Okay. So this one, you'll love this story. It's a goodie. And so I ran a promotion where we had a kite day, and I spoke to the council, and they said, go and do it at Auckland Domain. And I went, no, that's boring. And so I said, what about, can we hold it at Bastion Point? And they went, you'll never get a hold of it up there. The iwi won't let you do it up there. So I went and had a meeting with the iwi, and I said to them, I'd like to hold a kite day up here. We will have people building kites, we'll have food, we'll have drink, we'll have live music, we'll have this big festival up here on a beautiful day, and people fly kites.
I think you hired me for one of those events.
Oh, you probably did, because it was at I-98.
I was definitely at a kite day at one point, yeah.
Yeah, at Bastion Point. And so I went and met with them, and they were like, it's not really a thing. I said, look, I tell you what, there's going to be all these people coming with cars. So why don't you charge them $5 a car to park in the big field over there, and then you can make some money out of it. And they're like, hang on, we'll just have a think about that. 2 seconds later, they're shaking my hand, go, yep, deal done. And so that was fine. So we had this kite day, and the kites, and it's going off. We've got 20,000 people up there on Bastion Point. They've parked about 10,000 cars at $5 a car. They're making money like you wouldn't believe. So then the police arrived, And I'm like, oh, what's going on here? So they eventually found me and they said, are you in charge of this? And I went, yep. And they said, we've got a problem. I said, what's that? They said, there's a kite so high, it's coming up on the flight radar for the airport. I'm like, you're kidding me. And they're like, no. So we wandered around all over the hill on Bastion Point, and eventually we come across this guy, and he's lying on the ground, and he's got his hat over his face, and he's got a fishing pole in the ground, and there's a nylon line going up there. And we looked up, and you could not see the kite. And so the police said, "Yep, that'll be the one." So then, so I tapped this guy on the shoulder, and he's fast asleep. And he wakes up and his hat falls off and he looks up and all he can see is me and these two police officers. And he's like, oh, what's up, fellas? And they said, have you got a kite on the end of there? And he goes, yeah, cool, eh? And they're like,
yeah, cool, eh?
they're like, no, you're going to have to bring that down because it's
several thousand feet
on the flight radar. And he's like, so he sat there for like an hour just winding this thing down until he eventually got it all the way down. That's the stuff you can't control, but it was hilarious. At the end of the day, it was just a hilarious story. But
that's amazing.
When the police turn up to your event, you go, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a cool story, but also quite an achievement. I never knew you could get a kite that high.
It was a beautiful
I didn't know you could get that much on the spool of a rod. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And real, you know.
Yeah,
far out.
You can get them 500 meters long, probably 1,000 meters long, can't you? So you just put that straight up in the air.
yeah, that's taller than a building.
But some might regard that as success. I mean, the kite is well and truly up flying. It'd be worse if the kites weren't up flying. You know?
So that's the major thing. It's the stuff that you can't control are the only issues with the events, and that's why attention to detail and the what ifs. We're going to do this, but what if that doesn't happen? We can do that, and if that doesn't happen, we can do this. So you've always got backup plans in place, especially when you're dealing with people, because people are generally dumb.
Yeah, with outdoor events especially.
Yeah.
I mean, you obviously have contingencies for rain days and stuff like that. I mean, that's always got to be a tough one.
And insurance.
Yeah.
You can buy you can buy insurance as well. Hopefully you don't have to do it. Like I say, Gisborne 1999, we were very lucky. We were the only city that didn't have rain on that night. Everywhere else in the country it rained, so we were very lucky, and had a massive big party there. And it spoiled a lot of New Year's Eve parties. But yeah, you've just got to have good contingencies in place, good people. I try to employ the best security guards, because I tell them, you're not a security guard, you're an ambassador, you're a people manager. I don't want a security guard. If you want to be a security guard, go and stand in front of a bank. All right, that's not my idea of a security guard. Even right down to, and I'm sure they won't mind me saying that Red Badge have the contract with Trusts Arena, which is where we have to do, and so we don't have any choice as to who we use.
Right.
But I asked them, please don't wear your big red jackets. Have you got a blue jacket or a blue shirt? Because I don't want you sticking out like a big Red Badge security beaker in the night. I want you to be a people person. That's what they do.
Yeah, because their uniform is set up for standard security arrangements, which is probably highly visible, high-vis stuff, and it points out and says, look at me, I'm the big bad presence amongst you. You don't want that. Yeah.
Absolutely not. And they agreed with me. Yeah, I want them to be almost like ushers and help people rather than just stand there, you know. And if
it's a much nicer philosophy.
In case there's an emergency. You're there in case there's an emergency.
Yeah.
If there's no emergency, I'm paying you, so you might as well do something else and help people.
Yeah. There's a whole different vibe between what they put out versus we're here to help.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wow. Well, it's
a fun industry. It's a fun industry, and we've had so much fun, but just right now, it's tough. It's really tough.
So that's a good segue for what I was going to just mention then. Let's take this to, as we wind up towards the end of our usual podcast length, Let's take this to some high-octane, high-fueled speculation about where we're going, if you don't mind.
I wish I knew.
I know what's coming.
Well, I think you do know what's coming because a little birdie told me that you've got connections in high places that would suggest what we're being fed incrementally at a sort of 1 to 3 day rate of, hey, everybody go into lockdown for just a few days, we're going to reassess, is a bit of BS. There's bullshit and shenanigans there about what they're telling us when they know they're going to put us into a longer lockdown. So just to give anyone who's listening to this at a future point in time some perspective, we are probably re-entering today, Friday the 14th of August, a second wave of lockdown for New Zealand after having benefited some 103 approximate days of absolute taste of freedom where the rest of the world, we were the envy of them when they're in lockdown. So here we are. We've been given a few clues. Earlier in the week, we had people taking photo opportunities, getting a nasal swab COVID test with Dr. Ashley Bloomfield. We had hints of maybe it's important you should get ready for the second wave. Make sure you can buy some masks. We've had news reports of, countdown and foodstuffs and Pack and Save are limiting sales of disposable masks to one per person, but just in case it's coming. And then boom, at the end of the week it came. We're on. You've got till midday tomorrow to get your affairs in order. We're going to go into level 2 for the whole country, level 3 for Auckland, and we'll give you an update at 5:30 on Friday the 14th of August as to whether we're in a further lockdown. Now, I'd love your high speculation now before it.
So why did the old folks' homes and the rest home villages and all the rest of it be advised to book a security company from Friday midnight for 1 month?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know that. Is that now? Can we? No, anything you're about to say? Tell me if it's something you've heard through public news announcement or something you've heard elsewhere.
Not through.
Okay,
public.
So what do you know?
So
what do you know that people would be surprised to hear?
That's. I mean, there's that, and then, that was the one that's probably alerted me the most. Is when I got the phone call saying, "You got no events on again, eh? Nah. Do you want to come and do some security?" Okay, yeah, cool. It's for 2 days initially, but it's likely to be longer, potentially 2 to 4 weeks. We've been booked for up to 4. We've got to have people on standby for up to 4 weeks.
Wow.
And it's like, ooh, okay. That's so.
And the person telling you this was telling you about a job that wasn't a special event. It was going to be life as normal for us in a place that you'd be doing security for.
Yeah, it's a lockdown position because it's for old folks and so on. So, yeah, it's not. I don't want to be doing security at Eden Park. That's not what I'll do. If I'm working at Eden Park, I'm doing my normal work at Eden Park. But
no,
that's not there. So that's one. And just my gut feel is that there's no way that they were going to. The whole point was they had to trace all the people that had been involved with the family who had been verified as having COVID-19. So then it's up, what is it now, 17 people today?
Approximately, yeah.
17, something like that. So what about those thousands of boys that were at King's College where one of the family members went to watch the rugby the other week? What about all those people that... So from what I read today, I think there's about 1,000 people as a result of that family of 4 who are in quarantine for 2 weeks or home isolation for 2 weeks.
Okay.
But is that everybody?
Yeah. You mentioned something to me the other day when we were just doing our sound check together about people coming into the country unchecked or we've got all what was it? It was kind of an example of, on the one hand, we're doing all this and yet that is happening. Can you remember?
Yeah, that's where I was talking about, and we talked about it at the very beginning of this, is that on the one hand, we're letting people in because the rules, the humanity rules say we have to. Basically, you have the freedom,
That's right.
you have the rights to come into our country.
As a citizen.
You have the freedom and the rights to come home as a citizen, right? But what happened is that they're coming in, and as a result, we're in lockdown, so we've lost our freedom. We cannot drive down the road to go and see our friends and family. We cannot go and we don't have the freedom to go and watch a rugby match anymore because we've let all those people in. And it's almost like that rule needs to be changed. It's like, as I said, the world's a different place right now. I'm sorry, guys, but you just can't come home. There's 30, 40, 50,000 of you who want to come home. What about the 6 million people we're making stay inside their four walls at home?
Right? Agreed. But I thought it was clear. Sorry, I thought it was clear cut that anyone coming into this country through the borders would be contained and quarantined. I thought that was clear cut, so they wouldn't go into the community. That was the whole point.
Yeah,
so obviously they
done right.
Yeah, obviously they escape, and that's what I'm saying.
People escape, but people in 2 weeks you get tested on 3rd day and the 12th day, and then you go home on the 14th day. But some of those symptoms might not appear for 2 months.
Right.
It's a 2-week period long enough, and the other thing as well, we're putting them in 5-star hotels. So I'm putting these people in a 5-star hotel and paying for them, and yet there are people around the country who are living in garages and caravans and
homelessness,
living arrangements and homelessness. And they've got no work, so they're never going to be able to improve themselves because there's no work for them.
With the benefit of hindsight, given that we're at wave 2 and given that we have to let our own citizens back into our country, you would think that there might be some kind of army barrack style basic levels of accommodation that you provide for free, and then people can pay an upgrade amount for the next level and an upgrade amount for the next level and an upgrade amount for the 5-star level, if that's what you want, because then if...
Do we have those facilities?
I don't know, but we could have caravan parks. We have all kinds of things available. There are huge swaths of caravans available.
If you remember the very first lot of COVID people that came in, they all came past my house, and they were all living in the Whangaparoa Army base, Navy base, in mobile homes.
Yeah.
That was the very first lot, if you remember.
Sure.
I saw hundreds of them going past.
If something like that made it cheaper...
Then they all got upgraded to 5-star hotels.
If in the long run something like that made it cheaper and you had a civil defence approach to quickly building together these accommodation requirements for this massive prefabs, if you will, and you actually put people to work under some kind of 1940s Labour-style government, then, you'd have actually something that could not only be used for that period of time, but possibly could be sold off as small homes in the future to other plots of land where people are experiencing difficulty.
It's just not the Labour way, though. Got to be kind.
Yeah.
Got to be kind.
Got to be kind.
Be kind to
and
one
yet
another.
Practicality is ultimately a kindness, isn't it?
Yeah. I was going to say, let's finish on a positive.
Why not?
This has been fun.
This
has been fun, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks so much for coming on the show, Stuart.
Yeah. Cheers, Stuart. So good to hear your story and to have met you, and you're a very talented man.
Thank you so much. Thank you.